Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for the Pacific Coast people. Welcome to this AAPI Advocacy Forum. We do this about the fourth, usually on the fourth Sunday of each month, where we actually take one topic of interest, which is not necessarily medical, not necessarily CME, or but we take this, which is of interest to us. So this time, we have a very, very burning topic, which is actually raised a lot of questions amongst our members and also a lot of IMGs in India as to what next. And this, I'm talking about the recent ruling, recent law about the H1B visa status, what's going to happen. So after this came out, there was a lot of uproar. People didn't know what's going on. And we had AMA also reach out, Bobby Mukamala, Dr. Mukamala, who is the president of American Medical Association. He gave several talks on TV and several articles in national newspapers regarding this. So there's a lot of confusion and controversy regarding this still ongoing, and so I thought that it would be great if we get experts in this field to do this. So we have got three renowned experts from three different who focus on three different aspects of H1B visa issues. One, obviously, we have got somebody who is an attorney in New York, and I'll let Srini introduce them in detail. I'm just giving a brief preview and actually biding time till Rick comes in, till Mr. McCormick comes in. But so we have got an attorney from New York, very, very well versed. She deals with H1B issues. She has given talks to various national organizations like ours, and she came highly recommended. I'm looking forward to her giving an overview about the visa status. What we need to know about the different
Yep.
visa.
Okay. I think he's on. Rich is on in the plane, so I think let's get
Okay, good.
the.
And we have Rich McCormick, who is the congressman, which Dr. Srini will introduce, and we have Bobby Mukamala, of course, the AMA president. So over to you, Srini.
Okay. Thank you, Amit. Good afternoon, everyone. I think Rich is on the plane, so I think I would just introduce Rich. He's a physician, emergency room physician, and a congressman from Georgia, a good friend of mine for last 16 years. So he graduated from Morehouse School of Medicine and a congressman from Georgia. He's the most friendliest doctors and friendliest to the Indian community in the Congress, I can say. So he was the president of a medical school body in a black community school in Morehouse School of Medicine, and he started as a paper boy. Now he's a congressman. His CV is as good as somebody who can be a president of the United States. So, Rich, I know you're on the plane, so I don't want to take too much of your time. I think please go ahead and say what you need to talk about the H1B. There's so much stress going on in the community of physicians. So, floor is yours.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me, and thank you for your friendship. It means the world to me, and I'm sorry for the austere conditions right now. I'm traveling today back to DC from Georgia. I couldn't rearrange my time, so I think we had some conflicts, but good to be with you guys today. I know there's a ton of concern, not just on the H-1B visa issue, but also on the future relationships between India and the United States. Uh, there's a lot to iron out still. Obviously, India is not alone in this consumption of Russian oil and energy. Europe's also got some issues. Certainly don't want to have most favored nation status to China, given their misbehavior. So we have a lot to address there. As far as the H-1B visa specifically, the main concern is the folks that are coming over here when we have a bunch of kids coming out of college, especially in AI program and stuff like that are not able to find jobs. As you know, AI is now producing its own job. It's replacing the entry-level AI folks, and it's going to be a problem with the United States for employment for young American citizens. So that's going to be affected. Unfortunately, the Indian community is now being demonized for that. That's wrong. It should be addressed. But it will adjust that quota for sure into the future. The president's $100,000 initiative to buy an H-1B visa, I don't think is right, and I don't think it's going to be a long-term solution. I don't think any sort of access to America should ever be for sale per se. But we'll address that. We'll have multiple discussions in Congress as we go forward. One thing I will say, physicians specifically. Obviously, we need physicians. We don't have enough medical school slots. We don't have enough residencies to fill the need for the future of America. So this will specifically be addressed by myself to the White House. I'll do it today. I'll reach out after this call. Well, actually, once I land in DC, and we'll have that discussion with the White House folks that I have access to. So there's a lot of discussions still yet to be had, a lot of things that are not solved. Sorry, we don't have enough answers right now, but the good news is, if nothing else, there's been a lot of negotiations. Nothing's ever set in stone. Everything's fluid. The president likes to adjust things on the go and adapt to things as we develop how it's going to impact America. Sometimes things are said that in that context. Some things are said without really having a thorough understanding of the impact downrange. So there'll be many more discussions in the future, but know that I'm with you. We're going to have those discussions continuously. And we're never done having our interaction with you and I and everybody in this organization that you can't access to me and have that continued follow-on conversation. So I want to open up the specific questions as long as I can. I think we're taking off in probably about 20 minutes. I'll probably have to get off my phone before then. So yeah, me until then.
Yeah, Rich, I think that was great beginning. So do you see a momentum or willingness in Congress to create a physician-specific exemptions or a streamlined pathways? I think the green card, I think going to everybody equally versus just the physicians who are really needed in rural areas. We have 86,000 people physician shortage in the next 10 years or so. I think, do you see any momentum in Congress to make a different pathway for physicians for green cards and the H1s?
Yeah, so first of all, because of you is why I'm aware of this specific. I never really thought of it as a carve out, but you're right. This is a great point that you made specifically. I had really not thought about. I was trying to address the H1B visa in general, but specifically to your needs, to the requirements of the physician and healthcare community. Very unique, and it's something America needs. So I thought that was a brilliant idea, and that's something I'm going to follow up with directly, not just with the White House, but with the House as well, because I think you brought up a great point that I hadn't really considered of a carve out in the specific H1B visa community.
Great thing, Rich. Before I've told people to put their questions in the chat box. Rini, please monitor that. While he's doing that, Rich, I'm Amit Chakrabarty. I'm the president of AAPI, and met you several times. Actually, I was so impressed with your speech at the legislative day. I specifically reached out to Srini. I said, "Could you get Rich over?" Because the way you spoke, you're such a Indian friendly, doctor friendly. We love to have people like you on our side. And you're so I know that last moment's conflict came out, but you were gracious enough to accept this. The question is that I actually did an interview with the AMA hierarchy, and I actually mentioned to them that the Indian physicians right now, it's not a luxury anymore. It's a requirement. If there is if the H1B visa applies to Indian physicians or Indian residents coming over here, doctors, it will actually seriously impact the healthcare in the rural communities, because as we all know that the international medical graduates fill up the slots in these rural areas, and they are very well liked in that community. They become great leaders of the small communities. So that is a very, very important issue. And if you please do that, we have got a white paper from the AMA which actually says that, and we're going to perhaps do a paper which actually statistically proves that Indian international physician medical graduates fill up these slots, and they're required.
Yeah, and realize I used to be the president of the Morehouse chapter of the American Medical Association. Went up to vote in Chicago. I will say that the AMA is not the same juggernaut it used to be. It has very low percentage participation by physicians comparatively to its previous historical context. It's mostly funded to the coding, which can be going away at any time. If you're looking about the future of just weighing in on this, I think it's very important for physicians from every district around the United States to lean on their representatives, really put pressure and feedback, especially Republicans right now. Of course, the president is a Republican, and he will listen to Republicans a whole lot more than the Democrats. So especially if you live in a Republican district, make sure you're leaning on your representative to reach back to the president to make that impact. Because the more people he hears from, the more the White House is hearing from us, the bigger impact it's going to have. But I will do my part for sure.
So, Rich, I think Bobby Mukamala has a question. I think he's the president of AMA, has a question. Bobby, you want to ask? I think you're already unmuted, or I can read.
Yeah, thanks, Congressman Bobby Mukamala. It was nice meeting you at the last reception. I guess the comment that I had is timing is very important in this because June is when new folks start, right? The international medical graduates that come. And so that's obviously like 6 months from now, 7 months from now.
Sure.
And naturally, those people that are facing a challenge are like, I don't know if this is going to get fixed. The hospital is never going to, like, I live in Flint, Michigan. Our hospitals can't afford 35 residents times $100,000 each. So there's a time sensitivity for the solution. It'd be great if it gets solved, but it's not the kind of thing that can really wait a year for you being influential with what you just said. It's a time critical thing.
Yeah, and the nice thing is we do have direct access. We do have influence. As you know, there's a lot of things on the plate right now. One of the problems that's holding us up right now is everything's going to be a distraction until this shutdown is over. And the shutdown doesn't look like it's going to end as fast as I thought it was going to be. Originally, I thought it was going to end last week. Now I think it's going to be well into November. Unfortunately, we'll see once we start running out of money for WIC, SNAP, things like that. I think it'll put a lot of pressure on people to come to the table and actually do it. I'm telling you, the Democrats are pretty dug in, but so are the Republicans. No way. There's no way that at least 95% of us are dug in and say, if you give them what they want, the minority, they'll do this every year because they couldn't pass this when they were in the majority. So it's just a bad way to govern. It's not democracy. It's unprecedented. And so, but with that said, we do have some time to address this behind closed doors with his staff, with his hierarchy, and I think we will make some because of its impact, because of how it affects the average citizen. I think we'll have a good impact on that.
Thanks, Rich. I think I have a follow-up question, and I think just not you, you're one of the many congressmen, one of the many senators. So what would be the most effective message physicians and communities should communicate with their lawmakers so that they can make the change, whether it's a Democrat or Republican? Every region is going to be affected by the underserved areas, the rural areas, all are affected by international medical graduates not coming there. So what is your message to them?
Yeah, you just summed it up very well. This isn't about a immigrant. This is about the Americans that are here. You make it about them. You make it about the voters. You make it about the rural community, which is suffering the most. We have the least access to healthcare. Our hospital systems are struggling. That's why we have to recruit from outside America to actually service those areas. If rural America is not served, they're unhappy. And they are, by the way, by and large, Republican voters. I'd say well over 90% of the rural community. That's where you have your Republican district. So serving those communities is very important to the president, it's very important to those congressmen, it's very important to the future of America and access and healthcare and longevity, mortality. This is an American problem that's being addressed in a very healthy way, and immigration is a very important part of that. So just showing that up and making sure they understand this is not about anybody else other than the people. And once they realize it's a very pure motive, they should come on board.
A question from Arti Shah. National interest waiver concept is known to USCIS for a permanent processing for H1B, albeit that is for H1B physicians. Medically underserved and health professional shortage areas for certain number of years. I think you need to expand that. I think even another question about J1 waiver visas for rural service under Conrad 30 provision, since numbers and H1B visas are limited. Do you have any comment on that?
So what I'm trying to do, and this is actually a bipartisan effort, but we're trying to right-size all the visa programs. It doesn't matter if you're talking about hotels, agriculture, IT, healthcare, construction. We need immigration everywhere, but it has to be right-sized per year. It shouldn't be in one set piece where it's a certain number until we revise it again, which is indefinitely. We need to be much more nimble and much more reactive to the market, what we need here in the United States, which varies. Sometimes you'll need a lot. Sometimes you may need few. Sometimes will be a negative numbers. So this is really important to have something that's right-sized for America per year. It requires some predictive values, some specialties, some people looking forward. I think it's something we can do and we should do, and I think this is the right time to address it.
Thank you. There's another question from Dr. Jayesh. He's the president of Texas Medical Association. He's talking about many new states are making the laws, like doctor's law in Texas. In Georgia, too, we're working on a law to get the doctors available without going through the residency program, but basically an alternate pathway. So if this H1B bottleneck may strangle those kind of availabilities for the rural areas.
It's funny. I haven't heard all the options we had to immigrate people here to fulfill those needs. I'm sure if we're creative, we can come up with better ways. And I said, I like your idea about H1B spot, but actually having a separate, specific healthcare visa might be a really good way to address this without having to manipulate internally to the H1B visa process. So nothing's off the table right now. I think the more we get creative about this, the better we can address a specific problem. And once again, this is obviously, my great love for the Indian community here in America and how much it makes up my constituency. For those of you who don't realize, 1 of every 5 doctors in my community are from India. It's a huge portion. I think over 100,000 of my districts, were probably largest in America, out of 435 districts. Also, probably the reason it's the wealthiest Republican district in America. But it's far beyond that. This is about America. This is about the future and not just the financial wealth of America. So address a lot of things to give us a lot of leverage to get done what we need to get done.
Okay, thanks a lot,
Awesome.
Rich. I think you're going to flight may be starting soon.
There's one more question. If this is a very, very specific question for Rick, I think if you can answer this, if you cannot, that's fine. Is the Senate Bill 2759/HR 5283, aka Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act, is a bipartisan legislation. So were you aware of it, or were you a signatory to that legislation? And how does that affect what we are facing now?
So this is one of the things we need to do better with, and this is why I've really been trying to get my bills co-sponsored by the Senate folks. They have not pushed it over to my office that I'm aware of, but as you know, we're very receptive to anything that's beneficial. We need to have a co-companion bill that goes to the House. The Senate and the House are both controlled by Republicans right now. So I think if they can send that over to me, that'd be really helpful. A lot of you have contact with those senators. I'm happy to do a companion bill in the House or to sign on their bill when it comes down to this. But very few things come from the Senate to the House. It usually goes the other way around. We're usually way ahead of them on everything. They're still finding their grounding and being the blue majority. So it's better that it comes to us. And so I'm willing to work with any senators on this stuff, especially healthcare.
Great, thank you, Rich. Thank you. I know that you're have to get going, and appreciate your taking time and doing this. This is it absolutely shows your dedication and your support for us. Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you again on a legislative day in March next year, February or March. So thanks a lot again. Srini, over to you.
Rich, any closing comments about the thing before you go? And then if you be on chat, if you are on the internet on the flight, if you can monitor the chat and answer the questions, that'll be great. Do you have any closing comments?
I'll do as best I can. I'm on American today because I'm on Delta. Delta had full internet access. On American, I don't. But I'm sure my good friend Srini will backbrief me on the things I need to know. You guys always have access to me. I'm a big friend on this and issue and other things. And we'll continue to work hard for this. You guys lobbying to your individuals around the nation helps me. But just keep pushing, keep giving me ideas. This has really been enlightening for me too, just to kind of once again think outside the box and how we can get these things done. I look forward to work with you guys, and let's bring it home.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Rich. Yeah, thank you. The big applause to Dr. Rich McCormick for being there, even on the flight, and answering and talking about it. So I'll see you later, Rich. I think I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll look forward to it. Thanks, my friends. Appreciate you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. So Srini, why don't you introduce our next person? I think we should have Naveen go next, I think. Go ahead.
So I think good afternoon all. I know I think it was kind of a little different than we wanted. So we all know, I think Rich talked about H1B visas. I think there are some questions about the H1B, J1, O1. I think we have a great immigration attorney, Naveen Rahman Bora. She's a well-known immigration attorney to be talking about most of immigration issues, what we're talking about. Naveen is a partner at WR Immigration, managing attorney for the firm's New York office. Ms. Bora advises hospitals, universities, and multinational companies on business immigration with a particular expertise in extraordinary ability and outstanding researcher professor matters. She's been recognized by the best lawyers. Naveen is an active member of the California Bar, American Immigration Lawyers Association, and the International Medical Graduate Task Force. Ms. Bora has written extensively on various advanced immigration law topics and continues to present at local as well as national audience, including physician groups and universities. So Naveen, floor is yours. Tell us everything about what our physicians need to know about the H1B, J1, F1, platinum visas, gold visas. What are all the things available so that our physicians can benefit, especially the residents who are future residents and current residents can benefit from the information. Thank you, Naveen, for taking time, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. Can everyone see my screen? And if
Not
you
yet.
can, is it just not yet?
Not yet. Share now. Share again now.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Is it on?
Yep, it's on.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm just going to run through. I have a lot of slides. I know we talked about various topics, and quite frankly, I can go on for hours on this. So I'm going to just run through these slides really quickly because I know you all also have a lot of questions that have been popping up. Okay. So, okay. I just wanted to start that this is just informational only. Please don't take this as legal advice, and certainly anything, any follow-up questions, please speak with your immigration counsel directly. Just a little bit about our firm. So today I wanted to start with some basic concepts on what a visa is and status, because all of these come into play when we're talking about the presidential proclamation. And then we'll talk about common work visas for physicians, including J1s, paths to green cards, and then for anyone who is eligible for citizenship, I highly recommend applying for naturalization. Okay, so just to start, the visa, when we talk about it, a visa is the sticker that you get on the passport. It's only issued at a US consulate. There was a brief time when you could get a visa stamp renewed stateside, but that's no longer available. On top of that, you can only get the visa now in your home country. So before, people were able to go to US consulates in Canada and Mexico. That's no longer available. So the visa can only be issued now at a US consulate in your home country. This is just an image of what the visa looks like. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And then the potential delays for visas now is that because it is limited to going back to your home country, they're also limiting the visa interview waiver. So the drop box is highly limited. You do need to plan for booking an appointment and then making sure that you have enough time in case there are delays in your visa issuance. So certainly when you're thinking about going home to get the visa stamping done, have your employer aware that you may be gone for several weeks to complete the process. When you're entering the United States, again, always make sure you have all your paperwork in order. And then once you've arrived, the CBP, the agency at the port of entry, are the ones who are going to admit you. They issue you an I-94 every time you come into the United States on a temporary visa. It's critical that you go on to the CBP website and download your I-94. There may be mistakes. Sometimes they cut your admission period short if your passport's expiring. So always make sure you're checking it every time you come in. This is what an I-94 looks like. It's something that you also, you have to download online. They no longer give you an I-94, and they often won't stamp your passport. So again, it is on the individual to go online to retrieve this. Okay, maintenance of status, really important that everyone carry their documents now, including permanent residents. So before, we would advise green card holders to at least keep a copy of the green card in your wallet, but now you have to carry the original document. And then just note that if you do lose it, it is timely and expensive to renew that, to get a replacement card, but really important that you always carry your green card with you, or if you're here on a temporary work visa, proof of status. You always have to report change of address to immigration. And then if there's any change in your job, you do need to make sure that that an amended petition is being filed to note that, any material change to your job. All right, now visa processes, right, for physicians. So the most common one for J1s, the J1 is for residents, right? So if you're coming for GME, fellowship, or residence, most people come on the J1. And now with this, the 100,000 fee, most likely, I think new residents who may have in the past had the option for an H1, they may be limited to J1s only. The J1 has various categories, but for today's discussion, we're going to focus on the GME J1. The DS 2019 is a document that only ECFMG can issue. Once you've been matched and you go through the process of getting approval from ECFMG, then they'll issue you the DS 2019. If you're outside the United States, you get the visa at the US consulate. You need step 1 and 2 for the J1. There is 7-year limit. So folks who are in longer training, such as surgery, for example, you may need to get a specific exceptional need exception if your training exceeds the 7 years. The big issue with the J1s, of course, is that 2-year home residence requirement, and which means that you can't get an H visa, a green card, or an L visa until you've either obtained a waiver of that 2-year home residence requirement, or you've gone home in aggregate for 2 years. And a proposed change that you should be aware of for the J1s is before, on that I-94, a J1 would have, instead of a specific date by which their status would expire, it says DS, which is duration of status. Now the proposed change is that instead of saying DS on the I-94, it's going to have the program end date or not to exceed 4 years. So something to keep in mind on maintenance of status for J1s. Okay, H1s. H1s, of course, are the most common work visa. There is a requirement for prevailing wage and obtaining a labor condition application. Now, due to the government shutdown, while USCIS is functioning, Department of Labor is not. And so we're not able to actually file labor condition applications right now, which is stalling the H1B process. And for those who are in a perm process for the green card, keep in mind that your perm applications are also being delayed because of the shutdown. The H1B can be given, for residency. For that, you do need step 3. But again, if you're outside the United States and you're planning to start residency on an H1 and thereby avoid that 2-year home residence requirement, this may be limited or impacted by the presidential proclamation. H1s are given in 3-year increments with a total of 6 years. So again, for folks who are doing their residency on H1, and just keep in mind that you are taking up your 6 years of H1B time. So if you're doing 3 years of internal medicine followed by another 2 or 3 years for fellowship, you might be running out of your H1B time. And so the only way to extend that is to have a green card process started. And depending on how far along you are, you're able to then extend beyond the 6 years. Okay, now for the presidential proclamation. It was awful, right? That week of September 20th. Since then, and it's taken a month, we've got a little bit more clarity on who is affected. And to be quite frank, it's actually that the scope is a lot more limited than we originally feared. So anyone in the United States right now on H1B status is not affected, right? So if you're here in valid H1 and you're applying for an extension or a change of employer with an extension, you are not affected. If you are in the United States on J1 and now you're going to transition to your Conrad waiver job, for example, and you need to switch from J1 to H1, again, you should not be affected because you are requesting a change of status. If your change of status or your extension of status is denied because immigration believes you did not maintain status, you will get what's called a split decision, where they will approve the petition, but they're not going to grant your extension or change of status within the US. You actually have to go to the consulate, get a visa, and return. In those situations, you are subject to that 100K fee. The other group who is subject are the ones who are outside the United States. So for physicians, again, if you are outside the US, you've matched into residency and you're abroad, you are requesting the H1B petition to be approved so that you can get your visa at the consulate. Those folks are subject to the fee, okay? So again, it is a very limited group who is subject. And within the physician context, I believe that it really just affects the residents or people who are coming into the United States for the first time on the H1. If you are here, for example, working on H1, you've lost your job, and you have a 60-day grace period to find another job, but 60 days goes by really fast, and physician recruitment takes a while. So in that situation, you may also have the circumstances such that immigration is not able to grant your extension because you haven't maintained status. And in those situations, again, that individual would be subject to that 100K fee. The 100,000 fee, again, we believe it can only be paid by the employer. So even if you have the funds to pay, I don't think an individual should be able to pay it. It's something that the employer needs to bear. There are exceptions to this. Before, there was an indication that certain groups or industries may be exempt. They've made it very clear that it's a very narrow discretionary group that or individuals who may be able to get an exception to that 100,000K fee. So you need to demonstrate, again, no available US workers, national interest, and all of these, I think, are points that a physician can make, especially if you're working in an underserved area. But again, you do need to make these arguments, show that there are no available US workers. The petitioner, the employer, then submits the request to USCIS. If it's granted, then you're able to file the petition. So hoping if there is some type of effect that congressmen can do is maybe have that carve out for the medical community that they are de facto eligible for a national interest exception. The H1B lottery is, we were talking about that earlier. There is an annual quota. So again, for folks who have never had an H1B, they are subject to this annual quota. It is a lottery that happens in March. If you get selected in the lottery, then you're able to file the petition for an October 1 start. October 1 is the beginning of the fiscal year. The proposed regulations are that they're going to change how they run the lottery so that individuals, it's a weighted system where if you are paid at the highest wage level for your occupation and metropolitan area, you may have 4 chances at that lottery. If it's an entry-level wage that's being offered, then the chance of being selected in the lottery may only be like 5%. So again, they're going to give preference to folks who are higher wage earners, the ones who are more advanced in their career. Just to keep in mind that universities, academic medical centers, teaching hospitals affiliated with universities are considered CAP exempt. So if you are doing your H1B at a university affiliated institution or hospital, then you don't have to worry about this. I think maybe people who have been on H1B doing residency and now finished residency and are looking at becoming an attending in a private practice group, that group would be subject to the lottery because you've never been counted. And so this is something to keep in mind as you are finishing your residency. You're looking at job offers that you may have to, have your employer file an H1B lottery for you in March. If you're selected, then you would only be able to start in October. So there would definitely be a gap. in transitioning from residency to an attending position, and also you're subject to that lottery. If you're able to get a concurrent job at a CAP exempt institution, then you would do a CAP exempt H1, and then you can have a concurrent private practice H1 as well. I believe that might have been one of the questions that popped up earlier. Okay, these are some alternatives to the H1. And if you are subject to that 2-year home residence requirement, you are able to get these alternate visas without having gone home or secured the waiver. So the most relevant, I would believe, for this group would be the O1 for people of extraordinary ability. It is a very high standard to meet, but certainly if you are doing a lot of publications, presentations, you review for journal articles, you may have a solid enough resume to support an O1 filing. The other two are specific to citizenship. So if you happen to have an Australian passport, you may be eligible for the E3 visa, or if you're a Canadian citizen, you might be eligible for the TN, the Treaty NAFTA. But please keep in mind that for physicians, that is limited to teaching and research, not actual clinical care. I believe someone had asked about an H4 EAD, so that's for the dependent spouse. I think there was some challenge to H4 EADs, but that seems to have survived. And so H4 EADs are still available, but the H1B visa holder needs to have an immigrant visa petition approved and show that their visa number is not available, the green card visa number, and only then will the H4 spouse be eligible for the work card. The J1 spouse can also get an EAD. So we know there are physicians who the J1, J2, the J2 spouse may be starting their residency on an EAD. However, when the principal J1 is transitioning to an H1, the J2 will lose their work authorization. So to keep in mind when you are planning to do both, people in the couple are trying to do residency on J1, J2 EAD. Green cards, really, really quickly. There are a few. I'm going to run through these very quickly because I know I'm running over time. Family-based, immediate relatives are obviously the easiest. Those are the spouses of U.S. citizens, or if you are yourself a U.S. citizen and you want to petition for your child or your parent, you can. The other ones all have waits or delays in the categories based on the category. Within employment-based, there is priority workers, which are the extraordinary ability, outstanding researcher, multinational managers, advanced degree folks, such as the physicians, and then skilled workers and investors. This is the overall sort of flow of how a perm-based green card process works. It is dependent on your employer filing the petition for you. Okay. And then the perm labor certification does require testing the labor market. Right now, first part, step 1, was taking about 18 months to 2 years to complete. I believe it's going to take even longer now with the shutdown. But once the perm is certified, then you go to the immigrant visa petition, which can be premium processed. So you are able to complete steps 1 and 2 typically within about 2 years. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about when to start the green card process. These are the self-petition options. Extraordinary ability is like the O1, but a much higher standard. And then for physicians, you can do a national interest waiver or a physician national interest waiver. The physician national interest waiver is similar to, for those who are doing their J1 waiver job in an underserved area, they already have a 3-year contract to work somewhere. If you are happy there and you're willing to extend your contract to another 2 years, showing a 5-year commitment, then you can actually self-petition for a physician NIW. There are also some people who may have been working in underserved areas on an O1 and then have transitioned to an H1B waiver job. Again, if you can demonstrate you've been working in underserved areas outside of the J1 visa, and you can show a 5-year commitment, then you should try for that physician NIW. the visa bulletin. I know this is a very sensitive topic. So the way the visa bulletin works is that there is a quota of green card numbers based on category and countries. And for the for Indian-born nationals, this is really awful, right? This is just just to demonstrate how the visa bulletin moves. So the visa bulletin is a monthly State Department publication that says, based on where you are on the green card line. So if it's an employment-based case, your place in line is based on either when your labor certification was filed, or if you are filing the green card petition as an extraordinary ability or an NIW, EB2, that is your priority date when that case was filed. So you can track how it's been moving, and sometimes it doesn't move at all. Just to give you a demonstration. Okay, so for October, for this month, EB2 is now on April 1st, 2013. This means that if you had a green card process, the labor certification that was filed, way back in like March 2013, you're now able to get the green card. And just to go back on this chart, this date hasn't really moved much until October this year, in October, when the fiscal year began and there was a new batch of green card numbers. So it's possible that you may not see that much movement on the green card numbers until the beginning of the next fiscal year. We, as a firm, actually have webinars on the visa bulletin movement with somebody named Charlie Oppenheim. So I highly encourage you all, if you're interested in understanding how the visa bulletin moves, to listen to Charlie, because there's a lot of analysis that goes in trying to predict, how the categories are going to be moving in the future. EB1 isn't that great either, right? EB1 is backlogged by at least 3 years. So this is the very top, the cream of folks in the EB1 category, and even they have a pretty bad backlog. There's been no movement on EB1 for a year. Okay, now investor base. So the gold card, I know that is something that's been in the news as well. So the gold card, it sounds great. If you have the funds, it's $1 million, right? You get a green card. However, the way the gold card number works is that you will get a slot under EB1 or EB2, which may not be very helpful for Indian-born nationals because you're severely backlogged as it is. So in lieu of the gold card, EB5 still remains the better option for those who can afford it, because right now EB5 for investment in underserved, like high unemployment or rural areas, those are still current, meaning there is a visa number available. So for those who have the means, EB5 may be the best or the fastest route to permanent residency. I'm just going to run through these really, really fast. And then naturalization, I just want to note really quickly that anyone who is eligible should apply for naturalization. The test for the civics test, which tests your knowledge of U.S. history, government, and English, they have changed the test a little bit this month. Now you are asked 25 questions. 20 questions, and then you do get all the questions ahead of time, but it is just a matter of studying those before your interview. They also want to see good moral character. So before, good moral character just meant you've been filing your taxes, you don't get any brush ups with the law, so no criminal records. But now good moral character also now goes beyond that to, are you involved in your local church or temple? What kind of community service are you involved with? So just to keep that in mind as well when you're going through the naturalization process. So I think I'm going to stop there. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Naveen, for that
Sure.
great overview of all the visas. I think which our physician colleagues can utilize, and especially the residents and incoming residents. That was a great overview. We have a lot of questions. We go through the chat box while I think Bobby is going to talk about other things. So we'll have the question answer session after Bobby Mukamala's talks.
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Amit.
And as I said, just one thing which I interject, that please don't feel that you have to end at 1 hour. If things are, it's a very interesting topics going on. Just wanted to let you know that we don't have any time restraint. So you can, if you have any more questions, please post it on the chat box. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Naveen, for that wonderful the insight into all the visas. Our next speaker is my great pleasure to introduce our AMA President, Dr. Bobby Mukamala. By namesake, his name is Srinivas Bobby Mukamala. So Srinivas are the common names in South India. So Bobby is a current president of the American Medical Association and a board-certified ENT physician in private practice from Flint, Michigan. He's a longtime AMA leader. He also served as a chairman for the board. He has chaired the AMA Substance Use and Pain Care Task Force and played a visible role in the community responses during the Flint water crisis. People who heard about the Flint water crisis. He's the AMS 188 president and first physician of Indian origin heritage to lead the organization. We're so proud of you, Bobby, for doing a great job with AMA. We just want to know what AMA is hearing from the hospitals, residency programs, and physicians in the field with all your travel you've been doing, how these changes are affect our physician community and what AMA and as an organized the organization, how it can help the physician community. Bobby?
Yeah, thanks, Rini. It's a great opportunity for me to be here with family, talking about something that's so critical to our family. I mean, literally, my biological family. I mentioned that a lot in my speeches, and I'll explain in just a moment. But we already sort of got all the context of what this means. And I'm just going to share with you what I've shared with everybody that asks. In fact, in the chat, I'm going to just put, it's a long list. Please don't click on it now, but they're all icons for all the media. And this is basically just a fraction. I searched for what I did in the past 10 days, but imagine all of this media. There's a lot of interest, everything from US publications to in England, in India. There's a lot of attention to this particular issue, which is a good thing. I think it needs a lot of attention. But I'll just share with you some of the things I mentioned to those people that are kind of outside of our upbringing and background and culture. The example that I use is Hurley Hospital. So Hurley Hospital is where my mom and dad came from India to do their residency. The address, 1 Hurley Plaza, used to be the address for AAPI when my dad was very involved as the secretary of AAPI at the very beginning of AAPI. And what I tell them about Hurley Hospital is that this was a place that my parents immigrated from Andhra Pradesh, and it was basically a red carpet when they came. That my dad took a taxi to the hospital. He didn't have any dollars. He just had some rupees. The hospital person came out and basically paid the taxi and brought him in. They showed him his bachelor's quarters, and the rest is history, right? That was 1970, and here we are 55 years later. But the major difference is now there's no longer a red carpet, right? Now there's a $100,000 bill. So the taxi cab was much cheaper than the bill that we're getting now for $100,000, potentially for somebody like my dad. And of course, this hospital, even when H1B visas and Naveen probably knows better than me, but it used to have a bill of a few $1,000s that the hospital used to have to pay. Now that's $100,000. And so even with the $3,000, they were switching to more J1 visa holders instead of H1B. But there were still, several a year that were coming in. And our hospital the Hurley Hospital, where my dad and mom trained, has 35 IMGs per year. And several of them are H1B visa holders. And so what I say in my speeches is that 35 times 100,000 is $3.5 million bill, unanticipated, unbudgeted, for just one hospital in Flint, Michigan. Now multiply that by all of the hospitals across our country, and you can imagine what that number would be. And that's why it's prohibitive. It's not like hospitals are going to figure out where can we raise a few $1,000,000 to make sure that we have enough residents. And so these will go unfilled, right? And the consequence of that, what we try to convey to lawmakers is that the consequence, yes, it's to the individual. Yes, it's to the hospital. But the major consequence is, imagine if the hospital is missing 35 residents. They can't manage that workforce, right? They can't say, okay, you guys take more shifts. That's just an impossible number to solve. And at a level 1 trauma center, which is that hospital, they'll just go on bypass. You know what I mean? We don't have enough people. The emergency department can't handle this, and those patients end up bypassing the hospital, which means they're struggling to find other care. And so the major theme of my comments when I give these speeches, you can imagine that sometimes there's a very head-to-head battle. That the sort of the emotion that goes into something is we really dislike the administration for doing this, and we have to fight them this way. That is not at all what I say, right? So what I say in my speeches is we have to work with the administration to be able to explain to them what the consequences are if they don't make an exemption for physicians, and that we're glad that they're considering an exception, and we share with them all the data that we talked about today, including one of the most critical ones we think is the time frame for making a decision. We don't want this decision to take a year to figure out that instead of an individual exception, it needs to be an entire occupation. You know, the entire physician community needs to have an exception. And that's not something that, I mean, can imagine what's going to happen if I went to school in Hyderabad and now I'm considering where to go to do my medical training. And there's this unknown associated with H1B visas. I would just look somewhere else, right? And this physician shortage that we have in the US is not unique to the US. I mean, you could go, Canada is 45 minutes in that direction from where I live in Flint, Michigan. And chances are I could easily find a job in Canada. And if there's a challenge to getting one in the US, which would be my first choice, then I'm just going to go to Canada. Where does that leave this hospital and every hospital in the face of this shortage? So these are the examples that I give. And, you know, for someone who, you know, will have this conversation with us while awaiting to take off on a flight, it's, you know, it's a testament to their willingness to help us take care of patients in our time of need. And so the fact that, you know, the congressman was willing, Congressman McCormick, to have this conversation, I think is important. I did also hear something that I'll have to follow up with him on, which is a little dislike of the AMA because he thinks that we're pursuing things that don't make any sense. And I think I'll fix that with him later, hopefully. But the other statistics that I use is that almost 325,000 IMG physicians practicing in the US right now. And so when people think this is a small subset and we could easily do without, 25% of the doctors in this country is not a small subset. Right. And so and we have physician burnout problems. Physicians are retiring early because they just can't stand dealing with insurance companies. And so when 25% becomes less populated because they're burning out just like every other doctor, and we can't fill that 25%, and we don't have enough residency positions you know, to have US graduates fill all those spots. Again, this is a formula for a healthcare worsening, almost a disaster in the situation. And so, you know, this is something that we're very much working on. You heard a lot of the statistics already that between 2016 and 2022, more than 76,000 physicians went through H1B applications were processed for them, with more than 8,300 practicing in rural areas. And that's another major theme that I use. You know, my parents came to Flint, Michigan, right? They didn't go to Chicago. They didn't go to Los Angeles. They didn't go to Manhattan. And so this is something that helps our country in these rural and underserved areas. And if we make that more difficult, these areas are the ones that are going to suffer first. Eventually, it'll be a problem everywhere. But these are the ones that get affected first. And so that's something that was interesting. I was in South Dakota about 10 days ago, and before me was Dr. Mehmet Oz. And one of his major focuses, you know, he's a physician, obviously, is rural healthcare. And I don't think it'll be that difficult, if it hasn't already occurred to him, that a major consequence that will worsen rural healthcare will be if this H-1B visa exemption isn't made for physicians. So it's a priority of his. It's a solution that we provide as international medical graduates. And so I think that it should fall into a thought process that will help them push for an exemption. So, you know, again, this is something that I continue to get interviews every day on this particular issue, which I think is necessary, because I think what media has figured out is that this is something that's getting a lot of attention, which is a good thing. And the more media we do, the more likely it is that the administration will see some of that and say, boy, this is getting a lot of media. This is getting a lot of coverage. So therefore, we should do something sooner than later. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions. Looks like there's some administration is considering. What makes you think that, Bobby? Well, so this is what they told us, right? So you can see the statement that they made even a month ago that basically says that they understand and they're considering. And what they clarified is that, and I don't think it solves the problem, but this individual thing that Naveen talked to us about, that as an individual case, we can say, you know what, Dr. Patel, he's going to an area that's very much needed. Therefore, we're going to make an exception for him, right? Mrs. Shaw or Dr. Shaw is going to Montana. They really need her. We're going to make an exception for her. A one-by-one basis for people that account for 25% of our population is a disaster, right? That's not a solution to the problem. And who knows? Each of these individuals, each of these institutions that wants these individuals have to hire, and not that Naveen is doing something that's not important, but that comes with a price tag, right? And so you multiply that by the cost of preparing an application for an exemption times the number of exemptions we need. It's just not a good solution. So that's why I think the administration is seeing this. They're not saying no, they're saying maybe, and that's a good start.
Thank you, Bobby, for that overview. And I really appreciate your leadership at this critical juncture where having some kind of a background with your parents coming, I think that Dr. Mukamala, past president of AAPI, I think being at home when you're growing up, coming to AAPI, all that helps all the IMGs to just to fight it with your leadership. So I like one question, I think I always think about it like Rich McCormick said, he didn't know that the green card holders, green cards for doctors is any different than for a regular people. So I think it's nice for us to educate our legislatures. I think we don't participate in the discussions with our legislatures. I think that is, most people don't know that what the problems doctors face, especially IMGs. I, as a chair of the board of Georgia Composite Medical Board last year, and a member for the last 4 years. I learned a lot being at the table. So there is a saying that if you're not at the table, you'll be on the menu. And there's so many times that's true. And most of these people do not understand how what we go through our IMGs compared with the local graduates. I think it's our role to educate our legislatures so that they make the right decision. I think that is one of the things I think we need to do as a IMGs. Any comment about that, Bobby?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these guys do a lot, right? Our lawmakers, whether it's a farming issue, whether it's a border issue, whether it's involvement in military issues. I mean, the breadth of the things that they get to consider and vote on is this big. And so I totally understand why they may not know the details of a particular issue, like immigrant physicians. And that's our job, is not to judge them based on what they do or don't know. It's to inform them to say, hey, there's some details. I mean, I learned more details just listening to Naveen 15 minutes ago than I ever knew before. And we know more than anybody about the role of IMGs and the process of IMGs. So sharing those details with somebody like the congressman, I think, is a critical way to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
All right, thank you. I think that just going to go over some of the questions. I think Naveen, I think there are a lot of questions for you specifically. So I'm going to ask the last question to Bobby. In practical terms, what can medical societies and the state associations do to support AMA and your effort, and all of us together, we can take care of the issue?
Yeah, I see this as, yes, we can support the AMA in their efforts. And yes, the AMA needs to support AAPI in its efforts. Because when you think about those two entities, it's AAPI that's affected the most. So I see the AMA's role as helping AAPI, which is why I love all of these news stories that I'm doing. I don't know if the AMA is doing it because I'm the first Indian descent physician. I don't think so. I mean, they're passionate about all of these things. Physician workforce shortage is a goal of the AMA to solve. One of the ways to solve that is what we are passionate about in AAPI, which is the role of an IMG physician. One more thing that I'll mention, Srini, that's interesting to me. In Flint, they had a celebration where they were excited to have a Flint AMA president. There was an IMG that got up that was now that that next generation, IMG generation's kids are applying to medical school, I was shocked that this doctor, who is an IMG himself, whose kid is applying to medical school, was irritated by the number of IMGs that are still coming. That I thought was ridiculous. You know what I mean? To not be grateful for the opportunity we had and instead turn it because now we've got a kid that's wants to go to medical school or wants to start a residency. One, I think that's bad to not be grateful for where we are. Two, Flint, Michigan is not where US graduates come for residency. We're not stealing anything from US graduates. We're putting IMGs where US graduates don't want to go. And so anyway, that was just an interesting moment that I saw.
A great point, I think, Bobby. I think most people don't understand because if you're in the hospital in a like in the semi-rural areas, I think you think that there are so many physicians already there. They don't know how much shortage is out there. So dermatologists in Georgia, there are more dermatology PAs and nurse practitioners than the dermatologists because they cannot find one. If you go to rural area, it takes 3 to 6 months to come to a nearest town to get a dermatology consult. The same thing with the cardiology consult. It takes 3 to 4 months to do a cardiology consult. I think some of these people, I think maybe they're in their own silos, don't understand what all else is going on out there maybe, but majority of the people understand and support the IMGs. And I think IMGs have done a great job for this country. And I think there is definitely need for, I know there was a statistic I read, 86,000 physicians going to be shot in 2036 or something like that. So that's a large number of positions to be filled. Whatever we can do in multiple ways with the new laws, with the new licenses, I think all of them hopefully will correct that. Naveen, there's a question for you.
Before you go to Naveen, let me interject here. So I've worked in several hospitals, not too rural. I'm not talking about real rural. I'm talking about in the outskirts in Florida, near Orlando, between Orlando and Tampa, where I'm doing locums. Majority of the hospitalists and internal medicine people are IMGs, and they are so grateful for them because somehow, because of our training in India, we come fully trained, and they actually get rather than getting the bottom of the barrel, they get the top of the cream if they bring IMGs from India. So they actually look forward, and they are going to be affected very heavily if this goes on. So that's a little comment, and I've seen this. And that's something which is a symbiotic relationship, I should say. That it's no longer a luxury for IMGs to be here; it's a necessity.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'll just add. I mean, so Arti Shah had a comment that I think is very wise, and that's the patient's role in conveying the importance of this issue, right? Because if we as physicians, particularly a subset of IMG physicians, are saying you guys got to do this, it makes it look self-centered, right? I mean, the perception could be you guys just want to help yourself. When a patient in an area that's critically served by IMG says, "What am I supposed to do if we run short of doctors?" Because I happen to love my doctor. My mom had pictures of all her pediatric patients on the entire refrigerator with magnets. I mean, I had one picture, my sister had one picture, and there were 100 pictures of her patients. She loved her patients, and her patients loved her. And so I think using those patients to convey the consequence of if they lose people like my mom and the entire IMG physician population will resonate. So the AMA does that. We have a million patients on file that we will activate strategically exactly this way.
Great. Thank you, Bobby. So question for Naveen. I think this was one of the first questions before you talked, but is there exemptions for the new 100K fee for H1B filings for IMGs or the alternative pathway? I think the alternative pathway is still in business. Like the 19 states have alternate pathways to get the license in the United States. I don't know how much out there about the H1B or J1 for that. I don't know. In Georgia, we still don't have a alternate pathway, and our legislatures are working. More likely than not, we're going to have alternate pathway next year. Do you have any comments about that, Naveen?
No, so if they're not coming here for residency for GME and they're going straight to, is that what you mean by alternate pathway? They don't have to get training to get license and they can just jump right in?
So most states now have a pathway where they can work anywhere from 2 to 4 years with doctors in a structured environment, so
Yeah.
that they can get in Georgia, they will have a probably 2 years later, they'll get a temporary license, and then
Yep.
2 more years later, they'll get a permanent license. So the visa is still going to be, I think, is still up in the air. I don't know how that thing is going to work. I don't know, Bobby, do you have any idea how alternate pathways visa system works?
Yeah, the AMA doesn't have policy on it yet because it's still relatively new. And I didn't think it was I think that there was maybe half a dozen states, maybe actually close to 10, I think now.
19 states. I know 19.
Okay.
Last Federation of State Medical Boards that they talked about 19
Okay.
states have the alternate pathway, majority going to do it.
Yeah, there's definitely a trend in that direction. It's just relatively new, so the AMA doesn't have official policy. If I had to predict, I would say this is something that our House of Delegates would support.
Okay, so if the individual is outside the United States, then yes, they would be subject to that 100K fee. And then the employer would need to make that NIE request, the national interest exception request. I do want to note that even if you're not here for training and you're going down this alternate pathway, I believe you still need your USMLEs. Is that true?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's
So
correct.
you still
Yeah.
need all 3 USMLEs completed. And
Yes.
then I guess through that alternate pathway, you would show how you're licensed to practice in that state.
Okay.
Yes. And then if the facility or the employer is not affiliated with the university, then you are subject to that cap as well. So just there are a few hurdles here. So there is that annual cap unless this is a university affiliated employer.
Can a doctor who has a work permit EAD but doesn't have a green card yet open their own medical practice? Can they open their medical practice?
So it depends what the EAD is, but I believe so. There are different categories for the EAD. So, if you are somebody who's in that really long green card line, right, where you're pending adjustment of status and you have an EAD pursuant to that, then yes, I believe you should be able to open your practice and work pursuant to that EAD with a pending adjustment. But again, my answer would be depends on the category for the EAD.
Another question from Leela Paladigu. Can a resident on a J1 apply for J1 waiver with a further change of status to O1 and not H1B if the applicant qualifies and meet the criteria for O1?
So a person who is subject to that 2-year home residence requirement doesn't have a waiver job, but has a job offer through which they can qualify for an O1 visa. It's not a change of status. So the O1 petition would be approved, and then you would have to go to your home consulate, get an O1 visa issued in your passport, and then return. You can't do a change of status from a J1 to an O1 within the US.
And can a physician hold H1B waiver job as a primary job and maintain an O1 from a different employer also as a secondary employment?
You can't have 2 hats, so you can only hold one status. So you can get a concurrent H1 for that second job. You have to be an H1B status for your waiver obligation, and then you can do a concurrent H1 for that second or third job that you want to add on. And concurrent employment can be, it could be as needed basis. So it doesn't, if there's something you want to do on the side, you can do a concurrent H1 for that.
Okay. Then there was a question from Dharmik Jadwani. You mentioned the gap for H1B visa for fellowship or a job after residency due to lottery. Can you explain a bit what are they supposed to do during that time of if H1B visa has expired?
Yeah, so this is where you have done residency or fellowship on an H1 and you have not been counted towards that H1B cap because you were working through a cap exempt employer. Now you have a job offer for a private practice group. They are going to have to do a lottery application for you in March. And then if you're selected in the lottery, then they have the opportunity to file that H1B petition for an October 1 start date. And then you may be in a situation where you don't have continuous work through your residency program. So one potential option may be to do an extension with your same employer. So where you are doing your residency or fellowship, if it's possible for them to offer you continuous employment post-graduation, That may be one way to close the gap, but if there isn't a way to extend your H1, then you do need to return home and wait for the H1B to be granted. And then you're potentially then subjecting yourself to that $100,000 fee because it's going to be for consular notification.
Okay. So there was a question about, I think, somebody going to the medical school on F1 and changing to, so do you have any information or advice on international students who are on F1 visa to attend US MD or DO school and will need either H1B or J1 visa for residency?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually removed that slide on employment authorization for F1s. You do have 1 year. So if you're here for medical school, you would get 1 year OPT, optional practical training, and then you could potentially get, if the field is considered a STEM field, then you could potentially get a 2-year extension. So it may be possible to do, you would get 3 years of employment authorization based on OPT and STEM OPT, but again, I have to double check if that field of study is considered a STEM field. So that may be, otherwise you would have to do an H1. I'm not sure if ECFMG would support a J1 for a US medical graduate.
All right.
That's a question for ECFMG. Yeah.
So I think there was the comment about North Carolina House Bill 67. I think we talked about the alternate pathway for people who don't get into residency. There's a lot of openings. I think a lot of new laws coming up. I think for the residents or the IMGs who don't get into residency or who wants to do alternate pathway, especially if they've done post-graduation back home in their own country where they graduated. If they did the residency, there is an easier pathway. A lot of states will have those pathways. I think that somebody talked about the North Carolina unrestricted medical license after 4 years. If I have a H4 visa and want to change to H1, will that 100K fee apply?
So they are saying that if you're here in valid non-immigrant status, so an H4, and you request a change of status to H1, then you should be exempt from that 100,000 fee. But again, if there's any finding a violation of H4 status, for example, your H1B spouse may not be working right now, then they would not grant that change of status. But assuming everything is great and you're maintaining status, then you should be able to file without having to worry about the fee.
Okay. And another question about if they have a J1 waiver approved and if they want to go to O1 and not H1B, is that possible?
No, the regulations are very clear that you have to be on H1B status for the for your waiver job.
Dr. Sinha want to know, is there any solution to backlog on EB2 and EB1 for physicians in near future?
I would ask Dr. Makamala to talk about that. Is there push to help the EB2 backlog for Indian physicians?
I wish. Now, I guess the example that I use, and tell me, is the delay in H1B to green card conversion. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and the backlog on the 20+ year wait for a green card number.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we're pushing for it. It's an example I use all the time, but it's not. I mean, literally, I have to reach out to a senator or a congressperson to try to expedite it. And the last one I got it in 17 years because at 18 years, their kids that were not born in the U.S. would have to start their own process of application. So anyway, it hasn't gotten any better. We're trying.
That would, honestly, that takes an act of Congress to change the green card numbers.
Hello?
Sorry, somebody was, go ahead. Sorry, Navin. I think there was some.
Yeah, it sounds like Dr. Sudhakaran put in there that there's a resolution that the AMA is considering at the interim meeting, which starts, I think, in about 3 weeks. I'm looking for exactly that type of solution to advocate for it. So yeah, thanks for putting that in there.
There's a long question, Naveen. I think I'm a neurosurgery background, completed residency in neuroendovascular intervention on J1, currently in discussions to hire by an academic university, full license in New York and Missouri, I think Montana. institution is willing to sponsor O1 visa to assist in training to J1 waiver. So if you go through O1 pathway, would it later be subject to any restrictions such as 100K or when transitioning to J1 waiver?
Yeah, you can actually, my personal story is that my husband was a J1 physician who was on an O1 and in New York, and then actually managed to do a Conrad waiver in New York City. And then although he was with the same employer, once the waiver was granted, he converted to an H1. So you can go from J1 to O1. You would have to get your visa, come back in, and then your employer can always try every year for a waiver slot for you. And once you are selected and recommended for a Conrad waiver, for example, then you can do the change of status from the O1 to the H1 without having to worry about the fee. Missouri and
Dr. Narabatla asked, one of the issues with the alternate pathway is to secure a visa. He said a huge backlog of Indian specifically Indian IMGs are not benefiting from this as much as IMGs from other countries. Is there a way we can work on policy to facilitate visas for this subgroup from Indian IMGs? I think that's more a legislature question. Hopefully, I think there are a lot of things, immigration point of view. I think we can't answer, we can take, but I think we just need to educate our lawmakers so that individual, especially from a physician point of view, so much we can do. I know there is a group, a big Indian physician group who are waiting for the green cards. I think they would get green cards like probably 20 to 100 years from now if they go through these backlogs. I think these are majority of them in the rural areas. I think we need to do something about those physicians to get the green card rather than going in the general pool depending on their own country versus anybody. Like as a physician should have a special pathway. That's what I was talking to McCormick multiple times so that we can have some subgroup in one of the bills. They can put a sub bill so that it passes through. Amit, any other
Yes,
questions?
yeah. I was just about to tell you that there's an important group. These physicians have been. I know them personally. There are people who a couple of people in the St. Louis area. They've got physicians for Affordable Health Act, PAHA, and they. Have been lobbying about this for a long time. In fact, one of the person leading this has been working in the VA, serving the veterans for the last 20 years, and they're still in the backlog because the problem is that, and I don't want to undermine any profession, and I just don't mean to. I don't hope it's not taken that way, but they are in the same line, same crew, same queue as a cook, for example, or anybody in the IT department, or anyone who is in other words, they are in the general line. I'm not saying that we should be given a preferential treatment or anything like that, but I believe there should be. For these people who are lifesavers, who are required in the community, are really essential people. They should be at least given some kind of priority if possible. Yeah, and the other problem which we have is that, unfortunately, and correct me, Bobby, if I'm wrong, or even Naveen, if I'm wrong, it seems that the visa slots or the green card slots are the same for every country. It doesn't depend. It doesn't change with the population of the country. Naveen, you can answer that for me because I always have been intrigued by that. That India had the same number of green card slots as, let's say, Nepal or Bangladesh or even a much smaller country. So can you address that very very quickly for me, Naveen?
Sure. So there is one general pot of green card numbers, and then any one country can't have more than a certain percentage. And so because India, China, and Mexico have the largest population of folks coming in and getting green card numbers, those countries backlog because of just the volume. But you're correct. The total number, I mean, it is the same for smaller countries. It's just that there isn't a larger carve out for larger countries.
And that is something which is such a it's something the Congress should always address, that there should be some percentage depending on the population. That's another issue. That's one of the reasons there's a big backlog of these physicians who have been here for years and years and years, serving the rural population, serving the veterans, and still have been waiting for 20, 25 years to get a green card. And like Bobby mentioned very briefly, I have one person right here in Huntsville whose son was actually turning into what I think 21, I think, and he had come to this country when he was 3 years old, and he doesn't know anything about India, but they were planning to deport him back to India. And that was like an emergency kind of situation. What do we do in that? These are real stories. This needs to be actually sent to the Congress or the Senate, or we should have in the legislative day and stuff like that. We should address these concerns. Your comments, Bobby, on this?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I think I would echo exactly what you said. I mean, this is something that physicians' voice needs to be heard on this because the consequences of it are going to be very bad. One thing I'll also mention, Dr. Sudhakaran mentioned the AMA resolution, so I put them in the chat. There's one resolution from the International Medical Graduate Section that says pathways to U.S. permanent residency for H1B, and then there's actually another one from the IMGs that says physician visa protection and pathway to serve underserved communities. So you can see that the IMGs have a voice within the House of Delegates, and I don't expect any problem with getting these passed. So I'm thankful. So thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, we have the IMGs in the AMA. They're doing a great job. We are trying to help also. Very soon, this will be unveiling AAPI IMG section where we are actually trying to streamline people coming over there from India, and how to get residency slots, how to get the visa, and we'll have webinars. We'll have people who can do research and have the name in peer-reviewed journals. And also, if they want to do observership, we've got a whole database of people who can, if they apply, we match them to the observers who are willing to take them. So that's coming up. But I think that is not the solution. Solution is that what's next? I mean, even if they get a residency slot and they have to pay $100,000 to get in here, and that defeats the purpose. And what might happen is this, like I think Rich said before, that, or no, actually Srini said that people will look for going to other countries. You know, you know, they want to serve elsewhere. So this is a real big concern, and just us discussing this is not enough. Bobby, you are now at the helm of the biggest medical organization in this country. So we need your, and we have people like Rich who would take this to the Congress. So we need to seriously talk about what to do. And like you said, time is of an essence because what happened in the next 6 months. So can we form a task force by the AMA and maybe AAPI combined, or even we can get APNA also to be involved, and other international medical graduates to also spearhead this. This is just a thought for you to form a task force regarding this.
Yeah, so the AMA I mean, AMA won't form a task force for something that's this critical and timely. Task force is something that goes on for years. We have the IMG section that does that. For a particular issue, we just become active. Task force takes 6 months to form. We need an answer. We need a solution in less than that. So yes, the effort is definitely going to be put in. Collaboration is what I would say. And I think we already have that, and it's growing, which is wonderful to see between AAPI and AMA.
Awesome.
Thank you, Bobby. I think before we close, I think it's almost getting to an hour and a half. I think Bobby has other things probably coming up. So, Bobby, I think last question about what do you suggest physicians to do, especially to engage with their senators and congressmen representatives? Just give a comment and maybe just a closing remark.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's lawmakers that have to do this. Just like the lawmaker that joined us today, they have sometimes a lack of knowledge, sometimes a conflict of interest, right? And so the key is what I do is I tell them what goes on at Hurley Hospital in Flint, Michigan, not the 10,000-foot level, but what's going to happen in our communities when this problem isn't solved. People will get sick. Some of them will lose because they're waiting to get treatment. And that's what I think resonates the best. Because at the end of the day, it's their constituency that really pushes them to solve the problem the way we see it should be solved.
Thank you, Bobby. I think, Naveen, I think there was
Great.
one question about the J1 waiver deadline with all the lockdown. Do you have any suggestion for the people who are waiting out there who don't have, I think, because of the lockdown, they're kind of stuck? Is there any answer for them?
Yeah, unfortunately, immigration has said in prior years when there were lockdowns that these are extenuating circumstances, and so there should be provision for late filings due to the lockdown. So it is something where you should be forgiven and being and it's okay that you weren't able to file on time, because this is certainly something beyond anyone's control now.
Any final remarks, Naveen?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say that in terms of this, just this 100K fee, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be a month ago. So, and I think that maybe the MO here is to create complete hysteria and then tone it down a little bit. But certainly I'm hopeful that the two lawsuits that are pending challenging this will strike it down. But again, we're not going to probably have resolution on those two cases until sometime maybe early next year. But we are also all hopeful that that through court action that this will go away. So
Yeah, I guess I feel a little bit differently about that, Naveen, and that for those that are here already,
yeah,
not that challenge.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
need more,
yes,
and those are the people that are challenged. And putting it in court will never get it solved by June. But convincing the administration through the pressure of lawmakers, including the congressman, is much more likely to get it solved in a timelier fashion than pushing for court action. We should do both, but one is short term. Yeah.
No, I've also heard that there's also a bill that's been introduced challenging this proclamation as well. So I think they're trying to address it on the congressional level too.
Okay. I think there's a lot of things to do. I think legislature is the easiest path if they can carve out little bills. There are so many bills going through. I think talking through AMA, I think through RP, to all the organizations, we can educate their legislatures. I think that would be our easiest and a path to get to the President Trump's desk to do something about it. Thank you for all your insights today. The health of our communities depends on maintaining a strong, diverse physician workforce. I think we hope today's discussion supports the clearer understanding and encouraging thoughtful policy and advocacy. Hopefully, Rich McCormick takes it back to the legislatures and his friends. I think he has a lot of friends in the Congress too. So I think hopefully that would help. Amit, any final comments?
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, this was one of the most enlightening and actually very constructive forums we had, and we will continue to do this through API. I hope you have noticed that we are making great progress, great strides in getting things like this, questioned, answered, and maybe taking steps with Bobby at the helm in AMA and myself at the RP level. We can perhaps work this year. I'm very lucky to have someone like Bobby on the AMA side. So AMA is the largest organization, RP the second largest organization, and we should together we can actually move mountains. So hopefully we can do something, and we'll bring more to you. We have. And next time's CME coming up on stroke, and please read your newsletters. If you're not getting your newsletters or anything of that sort, please write to our office, and we'll make sure that it comes to you. Make sure to check your spam. We are making great progress, and please let your friends know to join more people join for these kind of seminars. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I really thank the speaker, the panel, and of course Srini for doing such a great job. I knew that. I mean, he's obviously was the right person for moderating this complex issue, being the chair of the Georgia Composite Board. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and thank you for your time.
One thing that I will say is that thank you very much, Dr. Chakraborty, for everything. The one thing I will not thank you for is that when Dr. Chakraborty is eating chakram and my stomach is growling while I'm about to talk, that's a problem. So I'm
I'm
going to
so
go eat
sorry.
some chakram. I'm going to go eat some chakram.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the
I'm actually driving.
driving.
I'm actually going to India right now this afternoon from Atlanta. So I was driving, so I had to, have my thing. But thank you very much
Okay.
for
Well, and on
the,
that note, I'll just share one
Yeah.
more thing. There's six AMA board of trustees that are taking a trip to India with me in January.
yes.
The second time that we're going, and a new six people, and I think that's a wonderful way to continue to build that bridge and make it stronger. So thanks.
Yes, and we are going to have our global summit around the same time that you guys are coming. Unfortunately, we might be missing you guys for a day or so, and I wish we could have known this earlier, and you could have made a trip one day earlier. So you guys are coming on 13th. We are finishing on 11th. So,
Well, it'll be
so
exciting. It'll be exciting no matter what.
you bet, you bet. Thank you.
One more comment about, I think, Dr. Satish Katula, Hetal Gore, I think Dr. Rangareddy, past president of AAPI and the chairman of Women this year. They participated, they enjoyed. I think they're also talking. I think Rangareddy Garu was talking about meeting Raja Krishnamurthy and talking about it. I think more doctors, more physicians talking to the legislature, that would be helpful. And I think in AAPI, in the leadership, I think they've been doing it, but I think we need to educate other people out there, the members, so that they can talk to. I think we support our legislators, but I don't think we don't ask anything in return, but even educate them, so that would be very useful. Thank you, Amit, giving me the opportunity, and for API doing these educational sessions. Thank you. Have a good evening, all.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you very much for everybody for attending.
Thank you.